mortals dare you to enter into the Lich's Lair?
We're back with the Lich's. I'm sorry.
The Lich's Lair is nigh. We're about to look at a subclass from VBunnie. Hello, VBunnie.
Hello.
So the Lich's Lair.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome. This is your second time on the Lich's Lair.
Yes, it is.
To challenge the Liches again.
Yep.
This is a segment where me and Jeremy take some time, along with a member of the Fantasy Labs community here. Someone submits a piece of work that they think is in polished and kind of ready to go state, and we discuss it at length. We really get into the nitty gritty. Honestly, kind of like we did with the Hell's Cleric earlier, which we did more than we intended to. And we just kind of evaluate each component of it in the context of our Fantasy Labs rubric, and at the end we rate it and decide whether the Lich takes it for their horde, or still takes it for their horde and captures the soul of the brave traveler into the Lich's Lair. And so far, no one has gotten out of the Lich's Lair unscathed, as it's quite a challenge, actually. So we'll see how this goes.
There are some overly critical Liches.
Yes, we'll pick every single nit we possibly can when we go through the Lich's Lair content. So VBunnie, before we get in, my question for you is there anything that you want to tell us about the Frost domain before we read through it?
It's a cleric, and it's based around frost and ice and snow. And I'm really upset that they don't have a snow or ice based subclass yet. Really,
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, is there really nothing? I guess there's does the Storm Barbarian have a Blizzard thing on it?
No, they don't.
No.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Never thought about that. So it looks like that's a niche that you intend to fill here, and I'm excited.
All right. Well, you got 1 point space right off the bat.
Yeah, you've already earned your space point. It looks like. All right. So let me I don't have it open yet.
Yeah, VBunnie, would you like us to read this, or would you like to read it?
Oh, you can. You're welcome to read it. I love you reading it. I love making sure that all my grammar mistakes are completely out there and in the open. That's the best.
Absolutely. All right, I'll take it away now. I'll start us off with the Frost domain. This is a divine domain for the cleric. Gods of ice and storm promote the ideals of control, purity, truth, vigilance, and beauty, often using the symbol of the moon. Some of these gods are portrayed as the moon itself or as a snowflake. Others are tireless sentinels whose eyes pierce every shadow and see through every deception. Some are deities of beauty and artistry, who teach that art is a vehicle for the soul's improvement. Clerics of a god of frost are enlightened souls, infused with radiance and the power of their god's discerning vision, charged with chasing away lies and turning away darkness. Some who follow frost gods march tirelessly and relentlessly, withstanding any storm or obstacle in their path, or in their way, rather. All right.
Yes. Do you want to talk about this, or do you want to go back and talk about it?
I think let's just go through the whole thing first,
I think
and
that's
then
a good
we'll start.
idea.
I'm going to take the domain spells, and then we'll jump onto the... And then you can take over with cantrips. Frost domain spells. So at different cleric levels, you gain additional spells. At first level, you have Armor of Agathis, or Agathis, depending on how you pronounce that, and Ice Knife. At third level, there's Gentle Repose and Snillock's Snowball Swarm. At fifth level, it is Sleet Storm and Slow. At seventh level, it is Otaluk's Resilient Sphere and Ice Storm. And at ninth level, it would be Cone of Cold and Hold Monster.
Great spells across the board. Just a quick comment there. Bonus cantrips. When you choose this domain at first level, you gain the Ray of Frost and Spare the Dying cantrips if you do not already know them. And then your core first level feature here is Cloak of Ice. Starting when you choose this domain at first level, you can use your action to surround yourself with a magical aura that looks like shards of ice. The aura extends 5 feet from you in every direction, but not through total cover. It lasts up to 1 minute, or you or until you dismiss it as a bonus action. While the aura is active, any hostile creature that starts its turn in the aura takes cold damage equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of 0 damage. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Cool. You want
And
to
then
do
you have
the
a channel divinity option at 2nd level. Sorry, Pete. I jumped ahead already.
Oh, I was just going to see if you wanted to do that. do that.
Called Tomb of the Ice Spirits. Starting at 2nd level, you can use your channel divinity to create a shield of ice around you to protect you from harm. As a reaction, when you take damage, you can tomb yourself in ice, which melts away at the end of your next turn. You gain 5 temporary hit points per cleric level, which take as much of the triggering damage as possible. Immediately after you take the damage, you gain vulnerability to fire damage, your speed is reduced to 0, and you're incapacitated. These effects, including any remaining temporary hit points, all end when the ice melts. Interesting.
The improved Cloak of Ice. Starting at 6th level, your ability to create snow around you improves. You can use your Cloak of Ice feature up to 2 times per long rest. And while the Cloak of Ice is active... Wait, up to 2 times...
Originally, it was 1 time per long rest.
Okay. And while the Cloak of Ice is active, you have resistance to cold damage. The aura extends to 15 feet, and the ground within the area is difficult terrain for creatures who are hostile towards you.
At 8th level, you went with Divine Strike, emphasizing a melee orientation for this cleric. At 8th level, you gain the ability to infuse your weapon strikes with Frost, a gift from your deity. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can cause the attack to deal an extra 1d8 cold damage to the target. When you reach 14th level, the extra damage increases to 2d8. And then the 17th level, Capstone, a Channel Divinity.
Yes.
Take them away.
I thought you were going to do it because you did Divine Strike. But no, I got it. 17th level, you gain the ability to create snow clones. As an action, you shape a snow clone of one creature that you can see within 120 feet of you. The clone lasts for 1 minute or until you lose your concentration, as if you were concentrating on a spell. The clone appears in an unoccupied space that you can see within 30 feet of you. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the clone up to 30 feet to a space you can see, but it must remain within 120 feet of you. The clone is a creature, partially real and formed from ice or snow, is considered a construct, and it can take actions and otherwise be affected as a normal creature. It appears to be the same as the original, but it is half the creature's hit point maximum and is formed without any equipment and cannot cast spells. Otherwise, the clone uses all the statistics, attacks, and abilities of the creature it duplicates. The clone is friendly to you and creatures you designate. It obeys your spoken commands, moving and acting in accordance with your wishes and acting on your turn in combat. The clone lacks the ability to learn or become more powerful, so it never increases its level or other abilities, nor can it regain expended spell slots. All right, so let's go through and begin.
One question I just have before we actually start analyzing anything. I'm wondering, whenever I make a subclass, I typically have some sort of like inspiration in mind, and then I also typically have like a character like concept in mind that I'm trying to like, and maybe it's from popular media, or maybe it's just something of my own kind of concoction in my brain. But I have like a character in mind for what I'm creating. I wonder, what was your kind of inspiration to like make this subclass or this divine domain? And did you have like a character concept in mind for it? And if so, what are they like?
Oh, absolutely. Originally, when I came up with this concept, I was thinking of, for one thing, an ice-based character, but I was also thinking a lot of Naruto vibes. I just got Naruto, like jitsus in my mind whenever I came up.
Water style.
Yes.
Yeah, water clone jutsu.
Interesting.
I get what you're saying. I kind of got that impression too, specifically from Ice Clone. I got the impression that was kind of what you were going with, as well as obviously there's nods to the simulacrum spell in there as well.
Yes. Also, if you look at the first and 6th level features, they're actually based off of warlock invocations that already existed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did notice that the first one's Tomb of Levistus. or I'm sorry, the first channel divinity. The second one there's Tomb of Levistus.
Yeah, this
And it's the Cloak of Flies, right?
Yes, Cloak of Flies. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start getting into this thing. So do you want to talk about the flavor text at the beginning first?
Yeah. So I don't know about you, Pete, but for me, that is not at all what I had in mind when I thought of Frost at first. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just wasn't the direction I would have assumed to go. See, when I think of Frost, I think of winter, and I think of the harshness and bitterness of winter. I think of Oril, the Frost Maiden, and which is the Forgotten Realms goddess of winter. And I'm wondering, what do you think of, Pete? And then also VBunnie, what did you kind of have in mind? What kind of gods were you thinking of that this would fit under?
For me, I can kind of see it, the purity and beauty things, the crystal clearness of ice. I get that vibe. The thing that was throwing me off personally is there are sections here that I didn't feel were clear enough how they were meant to connect back to Frost. I think the best example, and there's a couple of these, there's for some are deities of beauty and artistry who teach that art is a vehicle for the soul's improvement. That doesn't speak to Frost. I would like some explanation of why a god of frost would also be a god of beauty, because that didn't connect for me. Likewise, clerics of a god of frost are enlightened souls infused with radiance and power of their god's discerning vision, charged with chasing away lies and turning away darkness. Opposition to lies, opposition to darkness, discerning vision, these aren't things that I would necessarily immediately associate with Frost. And I could see, if I'm trying to fill in the blanks in my mind, I can kind of create a picture discerning vision to peer through storms. I can make the connection, but I don't think it's clear in the writing what connection you were thinking of there.
That is absolutely what I was thinking of. Actually, it's the purity and clearness and beauty of a nice new snow.
A fresh snowfall.
Yes, a fresh snowfall, as well as also that perseverance, that being able to deal with that nice bitterness if necessary, which is what I kind of alluded to at the end. Or at least
the last one I got the last one. That sentence worked for me.
I think what this needs is, I think you're trying to encompass a little too much, because I think beauty is a domain, is reasonably a domain in its own right for the cleric. I think truth even could be a cleric domain in its own right. Frankly, at least the way that they do domains in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So it's I think you might be trying to put a little too much. We might make it also a little too broad. I think saying clerics of the Frost domain worship gods associated with the calm and serenity of winter. The fresh snowfall is an inspiration of these gods, and they can pursue even the most daunting. They can persevere through even the most daunting of storms, or the most perilous of storms, in the knowledge that the peaceful morning will yet come, or something like that. Right? Something that gives that core theme of perseverance, of serenity and peace, and of or whatever you really want to focus on. I'd pick maybe 2 or 3 key words that are what you want to embody.
Fair. This is also just a bunch of flavor text. It's not. You can still understand the concept of what the domain is going for without.
But I couldn't. Is what actually I was.
Yeah, actually, I'm of the same page. I can fill in the blanks and create a meaning out of it for myself. But what we're saying is, you want your flavor text at the beginning to tell us exactly what you want the Frost domain to be, and keeping it. I know that contradicts some things we say, because we want to make something that inspires a lot of different characters, but it just needs a little bit more grounding than this.
Understood.
I think the bottom line.
Totally
fine. And I think, Pete was saying, there's some stuff in here that's very good. There's just a bit too much, to the point where it muddies the picture a little bit.
Understood.
But moving on to the actual spells.
Yeah. Frost domain spells. I'm
sorry. Before we move on to that, if you could pick 3 things that would be like the core tenets of this subclass VBunnie, just so that we know what that vision was 100% while we're evaluating the rest of it, what really would it be?
The spells are a huge factor in that because the cleric doesn't have a lot of that. And
I'm
the
sorry. I meant
is,
like perseverance or
ideologically.
peace, right? Like what's the vibe?
You were going to go for perseverance, the tireless and relentless, continuation kind of thing. Like probably perseverance, to be honestly.
A rugged
is
perseverance.
Rugged perseverance. There's one. Rugged perseverance. This has a lot of control, like Snow controls where you can go and stuff. So this has a lot of control based on it. And this is also a lot of basis in defense. So I understand I'm going into more mechanical terms, but that's what I'm going for this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I can. I
think we can roll with
saying. Yeah, for sure. So now let's talk Frost Domain spells, and I think you crushed it on the spell game. I love all of these choices.
I actually particularly like the inclusion of Gentle Repose on a lot of different levels. Even though it is already a cleric spell, I think including it here was a really strong choice because from just a scientific level, I mean, they find people from the Bronze Age frozen in ice still, right? That wild that they're still even remotely, identifiable as human after 10,000 years frozen in ice. So that works really well as the preservation power of ice, and I think it also really works to kind of cement and empower that kind of rugged individualism aspect. Additionally, I was
gonna say 2 that I wanted to point out really quickly were Odaluke's Resilient Sphere and Hold Monster. I really like when neither of those spells deal cold damage. However, reading them on there, they exactly carried the message of what you want them to be. Odaluke's Resilient Sphere, I was just like, oh, you just make a big circle of ice around you. And then that, protects you from anything coming in. And Hold Monster, just you freeze someone, you paralyze someone with frost. Both of those completely connected, even though they weren't ice spells. Great choices.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Great picks. All right, I don't know if we need to talk more about the spells. The rest of them are all totally spot on. I got no qualms at all.
Likewise.
Bonus cantrips. I get why you included Spare the Dying, and I think that works really well with the idea of perseverance, right, and survival, the survivalism aspects of it. Though there is already a cleric that's super hyper focused on the Spare the Dying cantrip, but I believe is the Grave cleric, not the Death cleric. It's Grave. VBunnie, do you think that's an issue? That
no,
it's included in this as one of its core things, but it's also one of that subclass's core things.
It's not, because there's a little bit of overlap with them, and I don't think that Spare the Dying's already on the cleric spell list anyway. So I don't think that it's such a big deal to include it as always prepared, because that gives you availability to pick something else. And it's not like every single feature is based on Spare the Dying. Otherwise, I'd feel then it's really stepping on the toes of the Grave.
Pete, I mean, I assume you're on the same kind of page. I don't have an issue with it. I was just wondering. I was just putting that out there as a thought.
Yeah, process. No, I think it's fine. Spare the Dying really worked for me. I'm picturing
a resistance cantrip. Because that also really works for me.
I did consider resistance as the cantrip. I thought that one was interesting. I also considered for a bit frostbite, because I think that also could hit it. But resistance isn't good.
It is very situational. Yeah, you're right.
That's a pretty fair argument against resistance.
I was just wondering, just because I think if there was any thought, right, of Spare the Dying kind of being a little too up in the Grave Cleric's grills, resistance would be the very reasonable, trade-off where it's the same vibe, but
Yeah. I don't know. The reason I like Spare the Dying is for the same reason that you liked Gentle Repose, Jeremy. I really.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I like it as well.
It really sells me on the. Like, more so than anything on this, Gentle Repose is the thing that inspired me on this character, on this subclass. And, like, I'm picturing the cleric that, like, is almost, like the wilderness mountain rangers that go around with the snow dogs, like, helping people. I just picture them, like, finding people on the mountains and just, like, say, I don't know, that really, that really worked for me.
It works for me as well.
Anyway,
I like
those
it.
choices. Yeah. Let's talk Cloak of Ice.
Yeah, so let's read this again quickly. Starting to the first level, you can use your action to surround yourself in a magical orb that looks like shards of ice. 5 feet in every direction, but not through total cover. Lasts for a minute until you dismiss it. Well, it's active. A creature that during this turn in the aura takes cold damage due to Wisdom modifier, and you can only use it once. So this is literally just the Cloak of Flies, but reflavored to cold damage and ice, right? There's no substantial difference.
Yeah, basically.
So the way I see that is, I like the feature. I mean, I like what that does, and I think it is kind of flavorful for a Frost Cleric to have just like an area of effect cold around them, and for them to be able to put that aura off. Like, I like what it does, but personally, I just am not like, I don't like something being that close to Cloak of Flies. Because Cloak of Flies is decidedly just such a unique feature. And I'm going to say kind of the same thing for Tomb of Levistus, because I think that Tomb of Levistus actually is the same, because that's what it is on the Warlock as well.
On it. There's an absolute change on it.
What is that difference?
Tomb of Levistus gives you 10 temporary hit points per Warlock level, and this gives you 5 temporary hit points per Cleric level. Additionally, the Tomb of Levistus is an invocation, which is an option to choose. So is Cloak of Flies, and they aren't typically used that much. Whereas this is a core
subclass.
Yeah. So yeah. Yes, that's true.
And with like 18 Cleric subclasses, they all aren't typically used that much.
So anyway, the way I see it is, even though technically, like, if you wanted to build, so it's really on.
Just a second, Pete. Can I?
Yeah, well, this is more of a philosophical discussion than a design one, because obviously the designs on these are reasonable because they are. I mean, these are published designs.
Yeah, exactly. I like Cloak of Ice, and I like it because of what you did with it at 6th level. And I think because you took this concept that exists somewhere else and you built on it and made it something new and unique later on, I think that works really well. I don't like Tomb of the Ice Spirits because, unlike Cloak of Ice, which is just things hurt when they come near you because it's cold, like, it's a very simple concept flavor-wise. It is very different from Cloak of Flies, even though mechanically it's almost identical. Whereas Tomb of the Ice Spirits is, even in flavor, almost identical to Tomb of Levistus. This is the kind of feature that, like, if you were a Kobold Press, right, and you published Cloak of Ice and improved Cloak of Ice at 6th level, no one would bat an eye. If you published Cloak of the Ice Spirits, Wizards would sue you for plagiarism.
Yeah, and anyway, that's
close.
It's agreed. It's just too close. Just changing 5 to 10 and Warlock to Cleric won't get you there.
Well, it's not my fault that the only ice-based defensive feature that has ever existed in the game went to a war.
Well, the thing there is, and I think you actually hit the nail on the head with that idea. There's only one ice-based defensive feature in the game right now, and you did the same thing as it, when instead you could have just thought about how you want to make an ice-based defensive feature that really brings out what you like about the Frost Cleric and what a Frost Cleric means to you, instead of just choosing to slightly change the only other existing thing. So like what I heard me say
Yeah.
that is that there's a lot of room for you to come up with your own new Tomb of the Ice Spirits rather than taking like even down to the name instead of Tomb of Levistus. Like because this isn't necessarily a class that even speaks to me of Tomb. Like Ice Spirits works, but like when you were talking before about beauty and artistry and storms, like I don't know if Tomb would be the thing I would go to, and I know that's a reference back to the
Sculpt
Levistus
of the
one.
Ice Spirits, yeah. Yeah, it was just a reference back to the original. But I guess that's fair. That's a very fair thing. It's just I don't see any other better feature of defending yourself
Well-
than surrounding yourself in ice. I mean,
Well, and there are other ways you can do it, though, right? This is really different. This is you are frozen inside a glacier for like a round. That is what this feature is, and that's what it is on the warlock in reference to the character Levistus, who is frozen in a glacier in the canon, and that's what it is here on your cleric. Like you could have gone with you create a dome of ice around yourself, right? And you could make it an opaque dome. You could have just taken language from like the what is it called ice wall of ice spell, which lets you make a dome of ice over yourself, and made your own take on dome of ice or on wall of ice that works at second level and would be unique to this cleric. And you could have the same flavor of I'm shielding myself with ice, but executed in a way that is unique. But either way, Pete and I's kind of feelings on this are about the same, in that from a design perspective, it's just too, and actually from a flavor perspective, it's identical.
I understand. That makes sense. That makes sense. Except it is for a cleric and not for a warlock, so I think that matters too. Because you could say, oh well, multi-attack is on a fighter is the same as multi-attack on a paladin.
That's not really
multi-attack is a
same
core game design concept of 5th edition D&D. It is one of the core features of the game that makes it what it is.
It is essentially ability score increase. You know.
Yeah.
Or expertise. There's another one.
Again, these are different things than like a niche ice defense thing is a lot different than something that's just a part of 5e design.
Yeah, we both know VBunnie. Like Pete and I know you know that those are apples and oranges. Those aren't related concepts in this case. This is literally the same exact.
Fair.
But let's talk improved Cloak of Ice. Jeremy touched on this a little bit.
So much actually.
I do as well. I really like the resistance to cold. I felt the same way I did about Tomb of the Ice Spirits as about Cloak of Ice when I first read it, until I again read this. And I really like the resistance to cold. I think me and Jeremy's stance on difficult terrain for creatures who are hostile towards you has changed quite a bit. But
I love it for that reason, though. Like, this works super well to me.
It's a lot more reasonable when it's around you and it moves with you.
Now, hostile is funky. I'm not sure hostile's a term you want to use here.
It says for your enemies within the original spell, but enemies is subjective as well, because I could just call Steve my enemy because he's right there and he wears his green.
Yeah, quick question. What spell were you referencing?
There is only one spell that does something similar to this, and that's Guardian of Nature.
Okay, so basically you took some concept of Guardian of Nature.
One particular basic concept.
For your enemies. That's interesting. Huh. Enemies is ambiguous. Yeah, the reason hostility is kind of up there, right? And I think, man, enemies is that's a poor choice of word, I think.
Yeah.
There's a concept, there's like an abstract concept of enemies. Like if there's NPC Bill who's been adventuring the whole time and you have this Cloak of Ice on and Bill's going to sneak up behind you and stab you in the back and you have no idea, does this feature slow down Bill? The answer is yes. And it doesn't make any sense, like logically, why it would do that.
I agree. I totally agree. I had this whole debate already with Cold Spark about this, but there and the idea, and a few other people actually, And the idea is that yes, you're right. It doesn't perfectly fit, and for your enemies, doesn't perfectly fit either. So because of that, I just had to go with something, and I went with hostile creatures rather than for your enemies. And I would explain that probably in a case where there is NPC Bill trying to stab you in the back,
I think
maybe
you just
you
say
don't know
creatures
that
you
they're.
choose.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you just say creatures you choose.
Okay, creatures you choose.
I think just make it that ambiguous, yeah. And I wouldn't even say when you activate. You could say choose when you activate the feature, right? Which is like I think what a lot of them do. But honestly, I think you could just say creatures you choose, and then when Bill stabs you in the back, all right, I'm choosing Bill now. Screw you, Bill.
All right. But I don't think that it's really going to hurt me in as far as any of your rubric. But yeah, creatures you choose.
Oh no, of course. Yeah, this is not going to bother you, frankly. This is just I don't even know what this is. It's just
we're talking. I mean, we're doing what we do on Lich's Lair, which is discuss minor minutia of language on 5e design.
I've got a question on. Actually, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go there. I have a question on this Divine Strike feature.
Okay.
Don't you dare, Jeremy.
Yeah, right. It says when your weapon strikes with frost, a gift from your deity. And I'm looking at some of the other ones. And the Forge Cleric infuses weapons with strikes of the fiery power of the Forge. Okay. And the Grave doesn't have that. It has spell casting. I guess the question is, do the other clerics have like a thing? Yeah, well, like, Divine Strike for War Domain is just with divine energy.
Trickery cleric.
Oh no, I think that's.
Oh yeah, no, you're
standard.
correct.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that is also
I wasn't sure.
where I got Ice Clone from. Actually, this was based a lot on the trickery and the radiant, not radiant, the light cleric. If you look at the light cleric and you look at their introductory expose, basically their little their introductory exposition, it actually covers almost all the things that mine did, literally. So.
But that's the problem. It's a light cleric's domain.
No, I changed it. I obviously changed it. But the point is that it was as equally as ambiguous and open to interpretation as this was. That's an interesting.
I think this is more focused than light. Frost is a lot more of a focused concept than light.
I'm confused, Jeremy.
Oh no, I was just wondering in the first sentence if that extra flavor text was like typical. I was just wondering because I'd never noticed it before.
Oh, yeah.
That's all. No.
Cool.
Nothing else. I was just wondering.
Okay, cool. I thought you were saying that there was something wrong with that.
No.
Fair enough.
No question.
Channel Divinity.
Just confused. Just wondering.
Ice Clone. So it's very atypical to do a Channel Divinity as the core, is the 17th level feature. Is there precedent for that, Jeremy? Do you know? Or
no. It does not exist. This is the first time. I broke precedents. I'm breaking the game.
Now, here's my question. Why?
Because of how powerful and potent it is, and because when I look at because this is based on another cleric, but very different. This is extremely different than what the original cleric has. It's a combination of their spell, Simulacrum, and the Trickery Cleric's
Invoke Duplicity.
Yeah, Invoke Duplicity. Yeah.
I'm well aware of the two.
And
the question I had is, why make it before we even go into the balance and what the feature is? You said you made it a Channel Divinity because of how powerful it is.
I made it 17th level because of how powerful it is.
But don't they always get a 17th level feature?
Yes, they do. But I want this to be their 17th level feature.
Yeah. Well, then why did you make it a Channel Divinity? Is my question. Why did you make it 17? Because that's the weird part, is that they get a Channel Divinity option at 17th level.
Well, for one, due to how powerful it is, and also because I thought it was interesting that they don't have a Channel Divinity at 17th level. I've seen a few Channel Divinities which are at 6th level, at 2nd level, at what was the other one? I think there was one that they got a really cool. No, yeah, no, it's only 6th and 7th level. So I'm like, why not do it at 17th as well?
The thing that kind of strikes me there, so like obviously you're really breaking convention by making that 17th level a channel divinity feature.
Yes,
And
I
your
am.
logic behind it is because it's so powerful, but wouldn't that just make you be able to use it more? Because you can have up to 3 channel divinities once you hit level 18. Rather than a once per rest feature. Like,
Yeah, making it a
this
channel
seems like it
divinity
would otherwise be.
increases its power level actually significantly.
Yeah, it makes it
Yeah.
it makes it a lot stronger.
I know it does. It's a capstone. It should feel.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's look at the feature here. Because I
Well,
assume you're on the same page, Jeremy. This is too good.
So I guess my last, like, I'm still just caught on channel divinity for a minute. I guess to me that's just not, because we're still from just the design perspective of breaking convention. To me, that just isn't a good enough excuse for it, frankly.
I just thought it
Yeah.
was interesting and fun and cool. I mean, it looks.
Yeah.
Well, that is a good enough excuse. If you thought
That is, yeah.
if you thought that like this is just the coolest way to design it, then of course.
And also because
our instinct is that this is going to be way too strong.
Oh yeah, no,
Well-
this is, I believe, unplayable. That's how powerful it is.
Yeah, this would be the best. Kind of like this would be the best thing in
Yeah.
in the game.
why?
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So the core thing that you're pulling from here is the
Simulacrum.
The simulacrum, of course. And one thing that is a little bit unclear to me is that okay, so maybe I'm actually misunderstanding what this does. Maybe this isn't as good as I thought. I'm misunderstanding what it does.
It's not as good as simulacrum because of one key difference to simulacrum, and that this cannot cast spells.
Okay,
the equipment and this cannot cast spells, which simulacrum can cast spells, which is a huge issue for why simulacrum even got changed in the past.
Okay. Abilities of the creature
Yeah.
duplicates.
So
So you can use this just to. I mean, you can
make a
use this
Tarask.
to duplicate. Could you? Oh well, yeah, you could do that.
I see a Tarask, I make a Tarask.
Yeah, good.
Which
Okay. So we both understand that is what this feature does as an action.
What you already can do as an action. A 9th level wish spell. I wish for simulacrum of that Tarask. Done.
That's not how that entirely works.
Yeah.
You can recreate a spell, and it takes an action to cast.
So for starters, I think you would know that just starting off by comparing this to like the DM discretion portion of
the most
Wish,
aggressive abuse of Wish, yeah,
is a sign that maybe this is a little bit too strong. Also, we were just talking about how a lot of the like a typical thing for a cleric to get as a capstone. Cleric capstones are balanced such that I believe like the war cleric gets resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and that's their whole 17th level feature. As opposed to like a feature that lets you summon a Tarask is not the same thing. And this isn't always going to let you do that, but also by making a channel divinity, it lets you do it 3 times. Simulacrum is one of the most dangerous spells in the game, and there's a reason that it has a casting time of 12 hours, and it has a really restrictive consumed material component. And
it requires the creature to be there for the entire casting of the spell. And it's limited to humanoids and beasts, and it's a whole bunch of stuff that limits that. You've stripped all the limitations away and gave instant Tarask.
And you've put one qualifier on that, which is that you have to concentrate on this, which I know.
And another one, it can't cast spells. That's another huge qualifier.
but again, like, if I'm sorry to keep going back to the Tarrasquel, but it's applied to everything. You know, an ancient dragon can't cast spells necessarily, but it can still use its Beth weapon and be an ancient dragon. And at 17th level, the play style of this becomes I dig myself a hole
cast
in the
Ice
ground.
Clone and hide. Yeah.
And put out an Ice Clone. This is, it's just game-breakingly powerful, especially on a subclass that traditionally cleric capstones are very much on the tamer side of things.
I understand. I completely understand, and you're right for an extent. I know this is a little strong, and somebody else had said that you were going to say this. And there's a few reasons. Like if you look at other classes, 9th level, you can cast Wish already and get a simulacrum. It's already a thing. You can use the 9th level spell slot at 17th level and get simulacrum. It says one of the free things that you
cast a spell with Wish.
Yeah,
and there's still a lot of other limitations on simulacrum. The actual spell that you would have to adhere to when you cast it using Wish. Like that you have to be touching the creature, that it can only be a beast or a humanoid. Like,
yeah, to be clear,
there
this
are
spell
a lot of other drawbacks.
This feature isn't problematic because it lets you make a simulacrum. This feature is problematic because it lets you do a way better version of simulacrum. And it would maybe still be a big point of contention if it was closer to this simulacrum spell.
Like beast and humanoid, which is what I was originally going with, and I don't know why I gave you the version that didn't have it say beast.
Instantaneous, whatever I'm fighting, I have a copy of it on my side. That just doesn't work. You're fighting the Archmage, evil Bartholomew, right? And with this evil, it's alternate reality Shadow Realm Bartholomew you're battling, and now you have alternate reality Shadow Realm Bartholomew too, and there's no gaming. The game's over.
Oh, yeah, I have alternate reality Bartholomew who can't cast spells.
Well, alternate reality Bartholomew is like a 15th level fighter and 20th level.
He's a real monster. I mean, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, if we could get constructive about this for a moment rather than just discussing it, because this is objectively, I think by all standards, this is just unreasonably too powerful.
I understand.
If you want to create, I don't think that the idea of this was a poor one at its core. Like, giving them a tie to the simulacrum spell because it's historically you make those with ice and snow, and giving them a way to do like a version of that themselves, I think that's flavorful, and I can kind of see it in a cleric that's domain is, frost and such, being able to do these. Although it's a little bit more wizard homunculus-y, but I can still kind of see that.
There are other issues here, like the fact that being that you control the clone, you now know the creature's statistics and stuff, like that breaks the game too. Here's
what I think. If you're gonna keep in this direction, here's what I think the thing would have to be. I think that the thing that you create would have to, if you're not going to do beast or humanoid, I think that like you would have to even make it just be like a copy of yourself, have it be a clone of yourself, and I definitely don't think you should try it to channel divinity, because this is definitely, if you're going to be doing that as an action, it's definitely going to be a one-a-day thing, and then further limited from there.
Yeah, I got you.
Another option you could go with is you could have it summon a specific creature that represents like an ice elemental. Like if you went to just the elementals in the monster manual, Volskyte, etc., and you started looking through, I know there's one called the Frost Salamander in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, right? It's a challenge rating 9, I think. And wow, that's a pretty cool creature that could be a really cool summon that you could create with this. That would be very unique, and I think still fulfill that fantasy of I summon this creature of ice, right? to do my bidding and protect my allies.
That actually sounds great.
Another cool creature, just as a reference, that this would like very much move it in a flavor that I'm interested in. Maybe it isn't the one that you are interested in, but an Abominable Yeti would be one that would really push this in a direction that I would be into personally. Because like again, we're talking about that like that gentle repose kind of like mountain wandering cleric. That would be the kind of thing that I would.
And how you're rampaging Yeti.
Well, you know, you've made friends with the creatures of the winter months, you know.
Great, I like it. I like it.
That's an option too, I guess.
These are
Thank you for these fixes. I think that they're gonna make it look so much better.
I wouldn't call these hard fixes. These are just, these are just directions you go.
Ideas, yeah.
You could go. And obviously, those ideas that me and Jeremy put forth would also require a lot of design work to make them work in the context of, this cleric capstone. But yeah, those are some ideas. So, Jerry, do you want to start looking at the rubric on this guy?
Yeah, I think it's time to take the Frost domain to the old grindstone. Also, welcome, Disco Daddy, and your raiding party of 7. We appreciate you hanging out
down, Disco
and not
Daddy.
going by.
Great name.
Yeah.
I love the name Disco Daddy.
It is an exciting name. Yeah, let's take it to the rubric. Let's take it to the
bring it to the rubric. To the rubric.
Space. Is there space in 5th edition D&D for a cleric divine domain focused around frost, specifically with emphasis right on perseverance and kind of enduring the hardships of winter?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. Jeremy, you had mentioned at one point.
Point 1.
Yeah, point 1. Just to talk about the space point more, because you already got it. But you had mentioned at one point, like, seeing this as more of a winter, like if you were going to go the hard perseverance direction and really lean into that thing, like, I don't know how married you are to the concept of frost, but that almost feels more like you would better get that concept across with the domain ideal of winter. And like frost and ice is, I think, maybe closer if you want to go in the more beauty centric direction and you want to push that more, but winter feels very enduring to me. Just a note that you could take or not take. But yeah, let's bring us to the next section of the rubric, Jeremy.
Yeah, balance. Is this technically balanced? And I think the answer, we're going to have to give it the old no's on that one. Ice Clone is just too strong.
Yeah. Agreed. I think other than that,
it's too strong to a point where it kind of overwhelms the relatively good balance everywhere else.
Yeah,
I understand. I totally understand. I wish you could give me half point, but I understand why.
If only.
Well, one thing I don't think that we will do is dock you the playability point on Ice Clone. I don't know where you're at on that, Jeremy, because that's going to be the next one here.
Yeah, so playability, obviously Ice Clone has huge playability issues. And if we wanted to say, well, Ice Clone has huge playability issues, and it's too powerful, and there are issues with design, all right, whatever.
But if there's there's one category, we pick the one that it's the harshest criticism in, and only dock you in that category for one thing. And so fixing the balance on Ice Clone would presumably make this whole thing playable, I think, Jeremy. I think the playability on this is fine.
I totally understand.
I think that if any one feature can only take 1 point off the board. And I think, that's definitely the case here.
Yep.
No issues anywhere else from a playability perspective.
Playability point, you got.
Well, I mean, maybe with improved Cloak of Ice, you see that hostile phrase. I'm just kidding.
He's a meme, and yeah. Let's talk. Is design next?
Design is next, and it's although your design is spot on across the board, I think this is where you get docked to the point because of the Tomb of Spirits.
Yeah, the closeness of Tomb of Spirits. We talked about Cloak of Ice and improved Cloak of Ice at the time, and one note I want to make: I'm cool with the design on Cloak of Ice and improved Cloak of Ice. But even that feature, it still does bother me a little bit, but that the design of that is so much Cloak of Flies. I would even like it if you made some of the changes that are on improved Cloak of Ice a little bit earlier on and then buffed it in a different way. Like, I think you could give them, like, make the Cloak of Ice do cold resistance from level 1, and maybe,
That's
like,
how it was originally. Somebody said that was too strong at level 1.
I don't think a niche resist, like, it's not like the nichest resist. It's not like fire or poison good.
Well,
Cloak cold is decent. I'm just saying that consider trying to make Cloak of Ice a little bit your own, more your own at first level as well.
yeah, and I kind of along that line, right, VBunnie, it might be a little too strong, but I think when you're designing for 5th edition D&D, especially in a field like Cleric, which is so well established, right? There are so many clerics to look at. This isn't like Druid, where it's the Wild West and you can do whatever the hell you want and call it a Druid. It's fine. This is the very established way that clerics are made in 5e. And I think you can just say, you know, all right, I'm going to have a little more power at level 1, and then my level 6 feature will be a little bit weaker than average. And you have the liberty to do that as a designer, right? That's something that you have the freedom to do. And I don't think there, frankly. Maybe the damage aspect of Cold of Ice doesn't kick in until 6th level. Like, you could have the 5th level, like this 1st level feature be the resistance and the difficult terrain, and then the 6th level is the increased area and the damage. Maybe. Like, I think there's some ways that, like Pete was saying, you could definitely make that your own.
But yeah, that would start getting me more there, because even though, like, the big design one is the Tomb of the Ice Spirits, I just wanted to note that it's worth trying to make Cloak of Ice more your own as well. Yeah, that's design. So I don't think we can give you the design point, but let's talk flavor. And I think this is the one that will be the most hotly contested here.
Definitely the most contentious.
Okay.
I think based on the features you have, so the Cloak of Ice, the Cloak of Ice, the spells that you picked, and the bonus cantrip Spare the Dying specifically, and how you described the flavor you were going for, I think you would get it.
I'm of like mind. I think there's a lot of flavor in the spells too.
But your intro text at the beginning that are try to define what it is did not convey that to me clearly. I wouldn't have known that was the direction you were going, except for what our conversation here. And then beyond that, yeah, I guess that's it.
In a lot of yeah, it was just the fact that the opening section was in a lot of different directions, but the
it's hard.
I know it's hard to explain.
You conveyed the flavor of this subclass a lot better in the abilities and features than you did in the opening text, which that opening text is important. Like, we do talk about that a lot and, like, consider that in evaluating the flavor, because that's, you know, setting the tone and telling people what kind of character this is meant for.
What's weird is when I've been making my subclasses lately, I start with that with an opening quip. If I can't describe in 1 or 2 sentences exactly what I want to accomplish with the subclass, I don't start working on it. And sometimes I spend like 10 or 15 minutes, half an hour even, sitting there just writing that 1 to 2 sentences over and over until I have what I see as a really strong direction of what I want to go out to create. But I don't know, Pete, what do you think? We're on the same page. The intro text here, the intro flavor doesn't convey the flavor, but the rest of the features and the design do.
Yeah, I'm actually basically on 100% the same page as you.
Is that a point?
I think it's a half. I think we can do a half a point for that. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good.
God. See, we're only supposed to give the half points when one of us thinks we should have a point and the other one thinks they shouldn't.
But what about when
I'm with you.
What about when we're both? What about when we both don't think either way?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the half point, and I even am leaning toward giving you the full point, frankly.
I think the full point would be fine because
Well, Pete, that's 2 against 1.
In that case, I think it should be no point, and we arrive at half point.
All right. Well, we're at the half point.
So there we are.
All right. So overall,
yeah, so 2.5.
2.5. This is a very, very strong start. And frankly, most of the, in fact, this is really weird because I feel like most homebrew, when you're working on it, there's like some issues on the like conceptual level that need to get resolved. This doesn't have any of that. This is just the second level feature needs either a replacement. It needs a replacement, and this 17th level feature needs a replacement.
Needs a nerf.
But
yeah.
Your concept and your design and what you're going to achieve, what you're trying to make here works, and it works
it's
really
cohesive.
well. Yeah, there we go. That's the word. And I think this is definitely on the way to being a very good divine domain. And one that really should have existed in 5e already. Like, why is there not?
Yeah, just
why
the cleric of winter and cold and ice and frost, and yeah, it's very surprising. Yeah, I know I like this. I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes if you end up doing more work on this, VBunnie. And we really appreciate you taking the time to make it and giving us the opportunity to pick through it.
And I want to just quickly give a shout out to Tiny Pencil, who has just followed us. Thank you so much, Tiny Pencil. We're glad what we were putting together here was worth it in the old follow. And for what it's worth, Tiny Pencil thinks that you should rework the 17th level feature rather than just replace it. And you know what? I think that's fair. Like, making little clones that you can move around is really cool. Pete and I both provided like ideas of things you could replace it with to have a similar theme. But if you could make it work, I think that context. Oh. VBunnie, you're back. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
Now it sounds like you're having.
I was saying, everybody, we're just going to wrap it up real quick. But for what it's worth, I think it would be cool if that ice clone feature could work, and maybe there's something you can do to make it. But it would be tough. But I'd love to see it if that's the direction you choose to go with it, because it's cool. It's a cool concept. Of being able to just summon up little snow clones.
I love it. I
definitely think the first place to start on that when you go at it is make it one-time use, get rid of the channel divinity, and make sure that you're not targeting any creature, be it just humanoid or humanoid and beast or something like that. So that's the first place to begin.
If I did beast and humanoid and I made it one-time cost rather than a channel divinity, I think that would solve the problem.
I think it's more complex than just if I just did this or that. I think there's a deeper kind of gutting and restructuring. The concept is okay. The whole execution is what would need to be changed if you wanted to keep this direction, I think.
Okay.
I don't think just taking the concepts of simulacrum work in this context. But either way, thank you so much for joining us, VBunnie.
Yeah, thank you, VBunnie.
Welcome back to the Lich's Lair.
Thank you.
And
Pete, if you'll do the honors.
Once again, the Lich's Lair claims another soul. There's no thing.
We need like a laugh track, like an evil laugh track for that. Just
can we get one lightning crash in that? I'll make it.
it. We need to get that going.
All right, we're gonna pop you back down. Thanks again, VBunnie.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for all the rest of you guys, if you want to see more of VBunnie's stuff, you should hop onto our Discord server. Links available at our website, dndtime.stream, where VBunnie shares all sorts of awesome content. We've only barely scratched the surface. VBunnie's probably one of our most prolific creators. He makes a ton of really cool stuff, specifically stuff related to like 3.5, updating it to 5e. So if that kind of stuff interests you, hop on our server, jump onto our workshop, and join in on our little fun community homebrew.
Absolutely. Jeremy, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, Pete, we got to take our quick break, which we should have taken some time ago. And when we come back, what are we going to do?
We are going... I don't know what we're going to do when we get back. We're going to talk about a couple of subclasses that Jeremy and I were working on. We might have time for one. We might try and cram them both in. Regardless, we're going to talk about some stuff that me and Jeremy have been toying around with. So we'll discuss that when we come back.
All right, see y'all soon.